Hi guys, welcome to my free Photoshop tutorial. So the main reason for having this tutorial is that some people mentioned when they were watching my previous videos that um, they were hoping that I would explain a little bit about how to use Photoshop. So I explicitly marked those tutorials as intermediate, so I'm actually thinking that, okay, you guys should have a little bit of a foundation knowledge in how to use Photoshop. But nevertheless, I wanted to just make like a free little Photoshop tutorial where I go over how I customize my Photoshop UI and also about some little workflow things that I always do. Yeah, so let's take a look at the Photoshop UI. I don't really do much in terms of a custom UI. I don't use like any plugins or like a special color picker or anything. Um, if you just take a look over here, let me just open a document or make a new document. It's easier. Okay, well, that's white. So let's see. The only thing I really do is here on the right side, I plug in the navigator. So that's a good thing to have, I think, because you can always see your image as like a thumbnail. And it's I think it's very important that your image always works even when you look at it like as a thumbnail. So if it looks good in the navigator, I can be pretty confident that the image overall works. So that's the reason why I have that one here. Um, the next one is like the color picker panel. I think the standard one is an RGB slider, but I actually like to use the HSB. HSB stands for hue, saturation, and brightness. That's for me at least the most natural way how I would pick a color. So you have on the one side you have this one here. Excuse me. You have these three sliders, so you can go around here. Then with saturation, you can make the color more saturated. And the brightness you can control here. So here you can pick any color that you can think of. You can also have this strip here. I think usually it's really thin, but by just pulling it out here, you can actually make it larger, and then you can pick colors here as well. That's pretty useful. I know there are many plugins that give you some kind of color wheel that's more closer to Painter, and I mean that's pretty cool as well. You can try those out. So much for that color panel here. The next one is the standard layers, channels, and path panel here. I never really use channels or path. It's just kind of in there. The layers, of course, one of the most important things, so I like to maximize it and have a lot of space here. I like a very clean UI. I don't like a lot of clutter and a lot of like windows floating around. The other panels that I use fairly often, but I kind of want to have it tucked away, is the properties panel. So whenever I have an adjustment layer, which I use fairly often, it would pop up here right away, and I have my controls right here. Also, the brush panel is, of course, one of the important tools you will use every day when you paint. I also have like the character panel if you want to like write your name or whatever. It's also pretty handy. I don't use it all the time, so it's like neatly tucked away here. Of course, you can change this and add more or less panels, whatever you want. They're all kind of hidden in here in the window menu item. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I really need for 99% of the time. The next one, I have a few settings I switch on. You can access the settings by pressing Command K or Control K if you're on a Windows machine. So here, just a few things I think I deactivate or activate. I usually don't like this flick panning. I disable these two here, resize image during place, because I pull in a lot of reference, and when I drop it directly on my image, it usually tries to make a smart object out of it. A smart object is not that it copies directly the image in there, but it creates kind of a link to the original image, and I don't really want that. Resize image during place, I just want the original size of the image, so it doesn't do any funky resizing. The next one, interface. Yeah, I don't really like that the documents are being opened in tabs. That's kind of annoying. I guess that comes from me using Photoshop since like version 5, not CS5 but version 5. And that tab thing was introduced, I think, when the CS line first came out, so I never really got used to it. Floating document window docking, and all this kind of fancy stuff, it kind of just brings your performance down, so I usually disable that. File handling, I don't think there's anything there. Performance, you want to probably maximize the amount of RAM you can use, but maximize within what Photoshop recommends. You can play around with the history states. For painting, sometimes it's better to have more than less, but I mean, you have to be careful. This can actually limit your performance. Cursors, I like to use precise over the standard one. I think it gives me a bit more control with the color picker. The rest is all pretty much standard. I don't do really anything special there. So the next thing I want to go over is maybe the brushes. I don't have many brushes. I usually access them you access the brush by pressing B, and then you can right click, and then all the brushes pop up. I don't use very many brushes. I kind of have them roughly organized by numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They all have kind of a different meaning to me. So the brushes under 1 are kind of like the hard brushes that I use for either sketching or that I just use very often. 2 are kind of the soft brushes. 3 is vegetation. 4 is like dirt or any kind of like texture brush. 5 is more the really opaque brushes that give me interesting patterns and can like lead to a lot of happy accidents. 6 is kind of additional brushes that have a very specific function. So there's like I don't know, birds or like chains, that kind of stuff. 7 is grids. So I can have stamps for certain grids, either like a perspective grid or like grid for vertical or horizontal lines. I didn't make any of these brushes by myself, so a lot of them I owe to like Jamie Jones or Maciej Kuciara, and I mean, you guys know what's out there, so you're not going to find really anything special here. I can share with you. I will share this brush set in this download, but don't expect anything fantastic out of it. That are the brushes. Let's see. The next thing I kind of want to share, I think, is a few workflow related items. So I talk a lot about clipping masks and transparency locks. So I want to show you how that works and how it can be really useful. So you can just like draw something on here. And now we have that on a separate layer. We can move it around. You hold the command key or control key down, and then it changes to this cursor, and then you can move it around, in case you didn't know that. So now what we can do is, if you access the transparency lock, which is, you have certain lock items here. The first one is a transparency lock. So once I press that, I can still draw. Let me get a different color. I can still draw, but it only draws over it only affects the pixels that I have already established on that layer. So you cannot paint outside, which is really good in case you want to establish a silhouette in your design, and then you want to start putting some shading onto that silhouette. So that's a pretty good thing to do. Just turn this a bit. I don't like the white, so I'm making it a bit, making it a bit darker. So yeah, that's one item. I use that all the time. It's really, really helpful. That's how when I break up those silhouettes in ZBrush or in from my ZBrush geometry in the last tutorial, and then I only want to draw on those layers, and then nothing else is affected. That's really, really good. The next one, the clipping mask, kind of works the same. So it gives you just the additional control over having it in different layers. So you have another layer on top of your original layer. What you can do now is hold down the Alt button, and then you see that you get, when you go with your cursor between those two layers, you see the icon changes. You can press that, and suddenly this kind of like a tab stop in Word. It kind of works the same. Suddenly this one is kind of secondary to this item here. So now whatever you paint on top of that, let me get a different color again. Whatever you paint on this layer will only affect where the pixels are in the bottom, in the layer that you made the clipping mask on. So again, the difference here now is, whereas if you use the transparency lock, you really never paint outside. If you, for example, press Alt again and click on here, you see that you actually painted on the outside of this layer. So the clipping mask is kind of like a non-destructive type of the transparency lock, if you want to say. You can. The good thing is here that this one you can actually move around. You can skew and you can do whatever. So you see, there's multiple different ways on how you can use that. So again, I use that all the time as well. So one interesting thing then, once you have, let's say you have a lot of these layers on in clipping masks, and you kind of like, okay, I'm done, I kind of want to merge it down. You can, that's what I do all the time as well. You can select multiple layers. You can either do that by holding the Command key or the Shift key to select multiple layers. And then you can either press Command or Control E, and then suddenly you have only one layer. Or you can also press Command Alt E. No, you can't. One second. Command Alt E. So what it does now is that it still merges all the visible layers, but instead of deleting the source layers, it actually combines everything and puts it in another layer on top. So in case you kind of want to continue painting, but you're not 100% sure, it's kind of like a backup where you still have these original layers. So yeah, that's also something that's really, really handy. In terms of really handy if you want to organize your layer stack. You can continue here with our amazing drawing, whatever it is. So that's another thing. Also, what's pretty interesting, wanted to talk briefly about using brushes very large and using brushes very small, like very small brushes. Not in terms of if the original brush is small or big, but how you can make it bigger and smaller. It has, I think, very different applications, and you can get different ideas out of it. So if I have a very big texture brush, you can see if you draw really lightly, you get interesting shapes that the brush maybe originally was not intended to. So you can play around. If you make it very small, you can suddenly like paint very precise, or you can even make it very small, so you can start drawing. For me, I use both the extreme small and the extreme big from time to time, because when I use this one, I really can start blocking in some values and some colors. I really hate sitting in front of a really wide canvas, and I don't really, it's like a mental block. I don't really know how to start. So with this, I can just choose any color and very lightly start drawing on top of it, and suddenly like I can start seeing shapes, and the the fear of the white canvas is suddenly gone, and I can start experimenting, and I'm not so afraid anymore to put my brush down. So that's really, I think, really helpful for me. So now you see, like, I mean, I have no idea what you have now, but you have this, and then you can start with more pressure applied to the pen. You can start drawing. So yeah, that helps me a lot. Yeah, so that's one of the other items I wanted to show. So you see me using a lot of post processing stuff on my images. So I wanted to just show, because I never really break down how I exactly do that. So I wanted to show it quickly. Let's just draw something really quickly. I'm not drawing anything that makes any sense. There's some abstract stuff, so I have some different colors on here. So that looks really amazing right now. You can check your values, and you can do whatever. Yeah, that looks great. So what I do usually is I go to the adjustment layer button down here. It's this kind of circle. It's kind of half full, half empty. So the first thing I usually do, because I want to experiment with the color scheme of my overall image, I use the color lookup. That's something I think that came, not sure if it came with CS6 or with CC. It's pretty handy. It's uses like 3D LUT files as like a lookup table file. This kind of technology finds its way now into game engines, where you can use a different overlay, different color overlay to really change the mood of the image. So here you have a lot of really cool stuff. Like you can make night from day. So it really darkens all your colors down, and the contrast. It works really well. Sometimes it's not like you can just plug this in and then suddenly your whole scene is perfectly like lit for like a night scene. It's like it's a starting off point. It helps you a lot. So you have like the typical teal orange kind of Michael Bay filter for your images. There's a lot of other ones that are really cool, so you can definitely like play around with it. I usually don't use it at 100% because it's just a bit too strong, so I go anywhere from 10 to 50%, seeing how it affects my image. I also like to use multiple of them, so you have more different ones. Even have like a black and white filter. You can get really interesting abstract effects here. You can also, don't forget that you still have your blend modes, so you can play with lookup tables and then the blend modes and then with the transparency, so you can get really nice subtle effects on your images. So I really advise against using anything beyond 40-50% because it just is way too harsh. Just to change that, and you made a conscious effort to choose certain colors in your image while you were painting it, so you don't want to destroy all that hard work you put in. You're just exploring different ways of maybe maybe if I give it a bit of a orange tint, my image would look a bit better. Usually on top of that, I apply color balance. Not much, just to usually see, okay, if I push it more towards blue in the shadows, or a bit more green or a bit more purple, maybe it would look better. Again, be really careful with these. I usually don't do anything beyond 12 to 15 in either direction because it just really destroys your color scheme. You can do that for shadows, midtones, and highlights. Really subtle shifts can sometimes just push your image a little bit further. So another thing I usually do is so I press Command A to select the whole canvas, press Command Shift C to copy all layers, Command V to paste it in. So you have a new image, and then I press Command Shift R. Go to Custom. This is the lens correction tool. So usually it's used to correct chromatic aberration and vignetting and lens distortion from your photos that you take. It tries to fix those, but of course we can also introduce those. So you can play around with the values. It's a bit cheesy and sometimes a bit overused, so you got to be careful. But usually I just use it to bring in some like visual imperfections that the camera lens would introduce to your image. I kind of like to use it in a subtle way. I feel like it kind of brings the image together a bit better and blends between the transitions between photos and paint, I think, are getting a bit less obvious if you subtly introduce that. Again, don't go all the way to the right or left. Stay somewhere between, I guess, 20 to 40%, 40 steps. Vignetting I also kind of introduce always a little bit. Vignetting is a fall off in light for certain, I guess, camera lenses that are not so good. So that the edges are getting kind of a bit darker because there's less light in there that can reach them. If you have a really good lens, then it usually doesn't happen. But I kind of like to introduce it a little bit. You can see before and after. So that is okay. I mean, here you can't really see it that well, but you can go back and forth so you can see it a bit. We can get an idea of how that will affect the image. The last thing I do, I don't always do that, but sometimes it just helps to get a bit of a film look. Sometimes the art director, production designer, or whatever, would specifically ask for that. I had that happen before. So to add a bit of film grain, there are many different ways how you can introduce film grain. So I usually do it, press Command A, press M for the marquee tool, right click, fill, use 50% gray, say OK. So this shows up, of course, but then once we change the blend mode to overlay, overlay only recognizes values that are darker or lighter than 50%. If it's exactly 50%, it's going to be invisible. And then let's have Command A selected. Go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. Use 5% Gaussian or however you pronounce it. Disable monochromatic. To add that, if it's a bit too fine grained for you, I actually do a Command T for transforming, make it a bit smaller. Then add more noise. Add the noise. And then make it big again. So that kind of it makes the noise less perfect and less sharp, and makes it maybe a bit more natural. So you can see, if I turn it off and on, you can see the effect of that. Again, sometimes it helps to bring the image together a bit more. Sometimes it's specifically asked for. There are many different ways how you can do that, some more elaborate than others, but I think this one is a pretty quick way of establishing that. And yeah, then you're done. One thing I wanted to mention, I highly recommend, if you're using, I think, Photoshop CC or CS, excuse me. If you're using that, I highly recommend you to use the autosave options. And you also want to activate save in the background so you can continue working. Save recovery information every 10 minutes. And that really saved my work so many times. It's really a lifesaver. It took a long time for this to be implemented, but well, better now than never. So yeah, that's my little overview over Photoshop. That's really all the custom stuff I do. The rest is all just standard Photoshop. standard Photoshop settings, nothing special. Once you have everything set up, by the way, you can always go here and say new workspace, and then you can save everything, save all the keyboard shortcuts and menus as well, give it a name and save it, so you can pull it up whenever you need it. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope I'll see you back with tutorial number 3. Bye bye.